Welcome to our today's webinar. We have three speakers. So first we have Jonas Elis from Germany, we have Adam Stefkowitz from Hungary, and finally we have Michal Kotnorowski from Poland. And they have all in common that they kind of talk about polls and politics today, which is the broader topic of our today's meeting. And I'm Jan Karem-Höhner. I'm part of the education committee of WAPOR, of the World Association for Public Opinion Research. I just got elected, or not elected, but I got invited in last year. So I'm quite new. It's the first time that I host or chair WAPOR webinar, but it's a pleasure to host today's webinar. I would say we just start with the first presentation by Jonas Elis, who is talking about the political behavior and political preferences of immigrant-origin voters, the challenges of capturing hard-to-survey electorate in large-scale electoral surveys. He starts with a presentation of about 20 minutes now, and at the end we have a Q&A of about at the very end, after all talks, we have a Q&A of another 30 minutes. So if you have questions, post them in the chat, write them down, keep them in mind. There will be sufficient time to discuss the talks today. So the floor is you now, Jonas. Thank you so much for having you today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for setting this up. You can see my screen and hear and see me, right?
Yes, I can.
Perfect.
It's the first page.
Yes, thank you so much. So I'm Jonas Elis. Thank you for the kind introduction. I'm the field and project manager of the Immigrant German Election Study 2. I will later explain you what it is. There are three more principal investigators, Achim Görres from the University of Duisburg-Essen, Sabrina Meyer from the University of Bamberg, and those are the two ones that are alive. And we have Dennis Spies, who unfortunately and unexpectedly passed away in June 2021. Pretty much of what we found out here and what we did in the Immigrant German Election Studies was inspired by him. So it's really a great loss still after all these years. So I will talk about the political behavior and political preferences of immigrant origin voters, and it will be split into a methodological part and a substantive part. So I'm kind of catching all of this overall topic of the webinar, I hope. So I will talk about the challenges of capturing a hard-to-survey electorate in large-scale electoral surveys and the substantive implications of that. So the main content is based on the importance and key challenges of serving immigrant origin voters, about possible and very selected solutions for serving hard-to-survey populations in general and immigrant origin voters in particular. And then we have these substantive findings on preferences and behavior. So first of all, when I am talking about immigrant origin voters, I mean persons that are over 18 years old, that are eligible to vote and who either themselves migrated to Germany or who have at least one parent who was not born in Germany. So this is a definition that narrows it a little bit. And it's very close to most, at least in Germany, official statistics and administrative definitions. And it's also often used to define sampling procedures in many similar studies like ours. So there are alternative definitions, such as extending this to the third generation and so on, just to let you know. So why are immigrant origin voters an important sub-electorate, and why are they so interesting to study? So first of all, they make up increasing shares of the electorates in most liberal democracies. And at the same time, we can observe that there are party preferences among some immigrant origin groups that seem to change over time. And this is often confounded or, let's say, shaped by cohort effects. And this is quite hard to track, but we observe this in our most recent studies. I will tell you a bit more about that. Then there is an immigrant participation gap that also applies to survey participation, which means that we see lower turnout among immigrant populations. And the same thing applies to surveys, as I said. This is one of the great normative democratic implications of this. And it's a problem because it means that many immigrant origin groups are not defined accurately in our survey samples or even in our election results. And the last thing we recently saw was that there are sometimes desperate attempts by parties to mobilize immigrant origin voters, such as applying candidate matching within boroughs of cities or within neighborhoods. And we see that parties are making use of international conflicts, such as the recent war in Gaza. And these parties are mostly really unsuccessful with it. But this shows that there is a reaction from the political supply side, from political parties to react to the unknown demands of immigrant origin voters. So this is quite a complicated graph, I have to admit, but I will just tell you the quintessence. And it is nothing specific to immigrant origin voters. So one of the key challenges for electoral surveys is that many large-scale surveys, and these are the flagships, especially in Denmark and Germany, are heavily overestimating turnout rates in their surveys, in their cross-sectional surveys. And this is the problem because, first of all, it shows us that there's a huge bias in these survey results, because this is a variable we can compare with statistics from with results from reality and from official statistics. And it also means that we have dependent variables such as turnout that we can't even use meaningfully in our analysis, because as you can see from the orange lines, the Danish National Election Study and the German Longitudinal Election Study, they have recently estimated turnout rates of over 95%, which is a huge problem. The situation is a little bit better in the UK. If we look at the Immigrant German Election Study 1 that we conducted nationwide in Germany in 2017, we can see that our turnout measure is far below the synchronized German longitudinal election study. This could be due to some kind of survey methodological thing going on. But this is not very likely, because these two studies, the German longitudinal election study at that time and the IMGIS, were synchronized. They had the same methodology. So it is more likely that we are observing an actual participation gap between immigrants and the majority population. So what I showed you is a general huge problem for survey research during elections that is not specific to immigrants. And here are some of the key challenges of surveying immigrant origin voters. The first one is that these voters are a moving target, so we can see changing socio-demographic compositions that are often due to cohort effects. So for example, the Turkish origin population in Germany often migrated to the country after the Second World War. People worked in the industry, and they were socialized in trade unions and so on, and therefore have specific patterns of party preferences, some of which I will show you later. And it is quite hard to keep track of that because we would need repeated surveys, which is not the case at the moment, or longitudinal setups that are unfeasible in these hard to survey populations. The second problem is that these voters can be a hard to survey population with huge differences between groups. So at least anecdotally, we see that there is an increased survey burden that is probably very aligned among immigrants. That's what we saw in the IMGIS studies. Immigrant origin voters, or immigrants in general, are not only targeted by social science surveys, but also by numerous other things because of their specific name structure, which makes them identifiable. This is the next point. They are hard to identify even in well-maintained population registers. So we have to use onomastic procedures, which are name-based procedures to identify people due to their name structure, which is prone to error. And then later on, we have language barriers when we are at their doorstep to mobilize them into surveys, and so on. There are many more. This is just a selection. So most of what I will use in this presentation is based on the Immigrant German Election Study 2. It is a follow-up project to the nationwide IMGIS 1 from 2017. You can see all the website references in this presentation, and further uploads. The IMGIS-2 was a 3-wave longitudinal CARTIS survey during the 2021 German national election, but only in Duisburg because we need a limited geographical space to identify this population and keep track of it throughout the election campaign. We have a pre- and post-election survey, and the 3 groups we cover, besides natives as a reference group, are Turkish origin voters, Russian Germans, and those of any other origin. So this is a coefficient plot with a dependent variable of survey participation in the IMGIS-2 screening wave, where we invited people to take part in a postal survey in order to verify their origin and ask for some basic questions. First of all, on the top, we can see that for natives, we see a participation, a response rate of 21% compared to 17% among immigrants. This will get far worse later on, since it is a longitudinal survey and the dropout rates develop differently for the 2 groups. But what we can also see is that the 2 models that explain whether people participated in the survey or not, they look quite differently, quite similarly, sorry, for the 2 groups. And we have variables from the sampling frame, social demographic variables, and neighborhood level context variables. And also when we formally compare these coefficients, we still remain with the picture that these 2 models with these variables we have available look quite similar. What we don't know, however, is how other variables we don't have in the model will impact all this. For example, where people stem from exactly, like someone from Western Europe migrating into Germany, things could look differently with regard to survey participation compared to someone coming from an unstable regime or whatever. So this requires more research. So one thing we did in the IMGIS-2 was to go to people's doorsteps and try to mobilize them into this screening wave as a reminder strategy, something we called in-person canvassing, and we also have a publication on that. First of all, what we saw, besides from this table, is that we could increase the survey participation by about 20 percentage points compared to a group that was only postally reminded. So this is a success. We gave them an unconditional incentive, cash incentive of €5. But maybe later in the discussion, if that's of interest, I can tell you that this was not the only point where we could increase participation. And we just went to their addresses and told them that it's very important to take part in the survey, and we told them about data protection issues and so on. So this was a success, but what we also see, referring to this complicated graph I showed you before, is that socially desirable things such as political interest, turnout, or not voting for the Alternative for Germany, a populist radical right party, they are less overestimated in this group that was in this in-person canvassing treatment group. So this is good news. And to be honest, this is not immigrant specific, because we are quite sure that this method works similarly for natives and for immigrants, but you can strategically use it to improve participation rates in this treatment to make your survey participation rates more acceptable. So let me lastly move on to some more substantive results from these studies, which you can also extend to others. What you see here is a map of the campaign intensity that was invested by 2 political parties during the 2021 election campaign in the city of Duisburg. These are 2 quite similar parties with regard to their left-wing profile. It's the Greens and the Social Democrats. And even for these 2 parties, we can see 2 differences. So first of all, the campaign intensity of the Greens was distributed quite evenly over the city, over this metropolitan area. And the Social Democrats concentrated their campaigns mostly on the north of the city or to the southeast where the university is. And this is really interesting because most of the immigrant origin voters, at least of Turkish origin, but also others, live in this north of the city, and they tend to vote more for the Social Democrats. So this means that immigrants can be, at least in metropolitan areas and maybe beyond, be affected differently by the political campaigns of parties. And in more models we see, or in regression models, we see that this has really an impact and should be taken care of, maybe in sampling procedures or in models explaining voter turnout or party preferences. The second thing we see, and we are trying to keep track of this, is that some immigrant origin groups are more or less dissolving their traditional connections to parties. So this is again data from this IMGIS-2. It's pre-election data where we have larger sample sizes. For Turkish origin voters, we know that the party preferences in favor of the Social Democrats, of the SPD, were far higher in the younger history, and it seems to dissolve a little bit and diversify a little bit. So you can still see that pattern. 26% is a lot. It's above the average in the whole city, but it is dissolving even in this stronghold of Duisburg, where the Social Democrats are quite strong. For Russian Germans, the Christian Democrats were always traditionally strong because that was the party that eased the migration into the country in the 1990s. And it was far stronger previously. We can't really tell the numbers, but that as well is changing a little bit. We have the Greens, especially among the youngsters, and we have the populist radical right party, the Alternative for Germany, that has gained some success and is by far the strongest party among Russian Germans compared to the other groups. So in general, the traditional connections between parties and immigrant origin groups are dissolving because we are measuring a lot of cohort effects, and that needs to be taken into account. And the last thing, substantive thing I want to just quickly introduce is that we can observe during the elections that different kinds of parties are implementing different strategies to mobilize immigrant origin voters. So one of the, to be honest, more successful attempts was one by the Alternative for Germany. That's what you can see on the right. They are obviously not a fan of Angela Merkel, former German chancellor, who seems to be burning the country. And they used Russian language advertising, especially to mobilize Russian Germans into voting for them. So we can't really tell whether it worked or not, but looking at the former table, they seem to be at least a little bit successful with it. On the left-hand side, that's far more interesting. What we see in Germany, at least, is that there are a lot of ethnic niche parties popping up. They're trying to mobilize among the conservative Turkish origin population. They're making a lot of use of international conflict, often very one-sided, as you can guess. And these parties appear and then they disappear again, or they remain absolutely unsuccessful. There are more examples, such as established parties doing candidate matching within boroughs and so on. But what this really shows is an important sociopolitical implication, namely that the political supply side is desperately trying to react to the demands of this growing electorate. At least that's my interpretation. And it is searching for solutions, but no one really knows how the exact voting behavior, except for us, is among this group. So these are the main takeaways. Methodologically, electoral survey participation and turnout are lower among immigrant origin voters compared to natives. We can see that standard explanations for electoral survey participation, even though that's another field, and turnout, work similarly for immigrant origin voters and natives. Surveying voters is currently becoming harder for the general population and for immigrants in particular. And on the substantive side, we can see that immigrant origin voters are a heterogeneous and a growing sub-electorate that will become more decisive possibly in future elections, and parties see that. The local distribution and situations within neighborhood is still a little bit under-researched, I would say, and is certainly, at least during elections, highly relevant for the effectiveness of immigrant origin voters by political campaigns, and we can see that the supply side reacts to the perceived political demands of immigrant origin voters. That's it. Thank you very much for listening. I'm looking forward to questions and the discussion later on, and I will stop sharing my screen. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Jonas. It was really cool to see how you proceed with IMGIS too. I mean, we shared an office formally, so together. So I mean, I also know all the hard work you put into that study, and it's good to see how much you got from it, and also with the publication. Well done, nice talk. Thank you so much. I would just proceed to the next talk now. So don't pull away. So you have to be here for the Q&A at the very end. But let's turn to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Adam Stefkowitz. He's also a dear colleague of mine. So, but instead of talking much about the survey methodology today, he's doing more stuff on public opinion and polling, which is a second field of him he's working in. And yeah, the floor is you again, Adam. You have 20 minutes. Have fun. Thank you so much for having you today.
Thank you so much, Jan, for the invitation. And do you see my slides?
Yeah, yes, I do. I do. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks. So first of all, Jan, I gotta disagree with you because I'm gonna be talking more about survey methodology again. So it's not like something very different. And compared to Jonas, this is going to be a little bit more general, because I wanted to give you like a general overview about the survey climate in Hungary and election polling climate, and less about the public opinion figures. So I'll be talking about a few words about Hungary, about the brief history of polling, and you know, some insights about the methodological climate that we're facing now in election polling. A slide about how election polls actually perform in elections. We'll give you some insights about whether or not people trust pollsters and poll results in Hungary. I also have some qualitative insights from interviews with pollsters. And I will close with some, you know, future directions. And you know, I really don't know how much you know about Hungary. I just wanted to say a few words about us. We're right there in the middle of East Europe. We're a post-socialist country. We're very much carrying that communist weight with us as a society. And this also means that our democracy is really young. We've only had 9 parliamentary elections so far. The polling industry is also very young. And in terms of the politics, we've had several governments, but in the last 14 years, we've only had a right-wing government, Fidesz, led by Viktor Orban, and they've had some massive wins on the elections, gaining 2/3 of the seats. But now it seems to be changing. And this is the only side you'll see about the public opinion in Hungary. You see here the average of the pollsters about the party preferences for each party, how it's been changing in the last few months. And what you see here is that there's a new growing opposition party called TISZA, led by Péter Magyar, who's actually head-to-head with Fidesz now. Fidesz won the last European Parliament elections, but TISZA is growing. There's an interesting disagreement now about the measurement of TISZA between pollsters, which I maybe talk about a bit more. So this is how we stand now. We'll have elections in 2026. You know, we'll see how it's going to turn out. These averages, by the way, were collected by another WAPOR member, Gábor Tóka, by Vox Populi. So, sort of about Hungary, and just a few historical words about how the survey industry and polling has evolved in Hungary, and you're gonna see some very similar things to what you've seen in your country probably. So what you see here is a change in survey mode choice in published academic research, which is not really election polling, but this gives you a good overview about how modes have changed. Of course, from the early 1960s and 70s, everyone was doing paper-based and face-to-face surveys, and these were, the golden years of survey research in Hungary. But you can also see that face-to-face and paper modes have declined, especially and particularly after the 1990s, where telephone surveys have appeared. And there's a strong increase after that in phone surveys. And after the 2000s, you see an increase in online surveying, and face-to-face is just declining constantly. And this is pretty much what's happening not only in academic research, but in market research and other fields as well. And just a few words about face-to-face, because face-to-face has been, the dominant method all over the world. And you see here the response rates for the European Social Survey in Hungary. I'm also a member of the Hungarian European Social Survey team, national coordinator, and I'm watching this very closely. And what we see is that, the response rates are declining, have been declining for a long time, but it's not like really bad. You will still, above 40%. You could say that we can get still a lot of people to answer face-to-face surveys, but we see really strong bias and major problems in the measurement in face-to-face surveys in Hungary. And, I have a couple of papers about that, particularly interviewers in face-to-face surveys in Hungary, a strongly biased measurement. There's a paper by Renata Németh and her colleague, and I also have a paper where we found also telephone surveys where we found that the interviewers' political attitudes influence the responses. There's another paper where we found also in a face-to-face survey that happy interviewers tend to recreate or tend to survey happy people. We found a positive correlation between that. And in the most recent ESS round, where there was a gender attitude module, we found that the gender attitudes of the interviewers are positively associated with the gender attitudes of the respondents, which is again interesting as something that you don't want to see in your data. So face-to-face is very much disappearing in Hungary, and with the ESS team, we're very happy to see the change, the mode shift in the ESS, that we're shifting to self-completion, because face-to-face is just not feasible anymore. Now you could say that, okay, but you got telephone surveys, there are lots of databases, there are lots of companies doing phone surveys where you can control your interviewers much better. And that's for sure. The measurement in phone surveys, I would say, are much more secure and better. But from the non-response side, there are major issues with phone surveys. This is what you see here is just an example. It's a typical phone survey nowadays in Hungary. And what you can see here, in order to achieve 5,000 sample size, complete interviews, you need 150,000 calls, which is ridiculous. That's that's around 3.3% response rate. And despite these awful patterns, we still do phone surveys, and for some miraculous reason, they still seem to match pretty closely with election results. So I'm not saying it's terrible, but the trend we're seeing is definitely worrying, and of course, this 3% is biased in many ways, and the sample compositions are just becoming worse and worse. Again, something that I'm sure you've seen in your country too, or you could have seen this in the US. People just turned away from single mode surveys because of these response rates. And we see the same here with single mode phone surveys. Now, okay, well, you can turn to online. Everyone is going online, it's growing, that's the future. And sure, it's many people are online, and there are more and more panels. Unfortunately, we don't really have many probability-based panels in Hungary, online panels. There's a new one, and with the assess, we're building Kronos panel, but most of the other ones are non-probability based. And what we see there is that the samples are skewed. And interestingly, there's a partisan-based bias in online samples, that left-leaning and anti-governmental citizens are just overrepresented in online samples, which means that you gotta weight your samples. So the online field is just not there yet to give you a good representation of the voting population. Now you could say that why don't you just mix these methods? And I thought the same, and I went to write my dissertation about mixed mode surveying in political election studies in Hungary, but people don't really do this. I had really good results with mixed mode surveys, even concurrent and sequential methods, and there are a couple of very promising experiments also from the ESS team with Push the Web mixed mode surveys, not really for election studies, but for more general survey research. And that's just very promising. But posters don't really do mixed mode surveys, and this is the pattern you see. You look at the most important posters in Hungary and their data collection modes. We mostly rely on phone surveys, also because you don't want to disrupt your time series, and phone surveys still give you a pretty reliable picture. But in terms of the future, I don't really think that phone surveys are feasible solutions. So I mentioned that I wanted to share with you some words about trust, the public's trust in polling companies and poll results, because I think this is something very important. And what you see here is that it hasn't really changed much in the last, let's say, 10 years. Every other Hungarian tend to trust in the results of polling companies, which I would say it's not a very good result. We still got around 45–50% of the population just don't trust in the results. They probably are non-respondents, or who knows. And what's interesting here is that right-leaning people tend to trust more in the results of the polling companies, which is, for example, it's something in contrast to what we see in the US. And we also have a series of experiments where we try to understand why people do not trust survey results, and what are the surveys that people trust. So what are the characteristics that those surveys have? And just wanted to show you one of these, where we gave the respondents, online and phone respondents, hypothetical descriptions of just standard party preference reports of fictitious election polls, and we varied the company who did the poll, the name of the company, and we also randomly varied the result of the poll. And what we found is that people don't really care much about who did the survey. They didn't differentiate between surveys done by different pollsters. which is a little bit surprising considering the polarized, media and public that we see in Hungary. But anyway, it's good news. Now, at this point, you probably want to know how well do election polls perform, although I don't really think that these methods are any good at forecasting what people will do at elections. The media and politicians and many people like these charts, and also it's interesting to contrast it. So this is what we see. It's not horrible. It sort of varies between elections. The most recent elections we have, that was the highest error of election polls, but it's possible that we're going to have a better one now. We don't really see very systematic or strong increase in errors, and it's funny that the Black Day or the Black Sunday of the Hungarian pre-election polling is considered the 2002 election, which I guess you couldn't really tell from this figure. Maybe we should reconsider that and change it to 2022. So what did the pollsters say about this? We have a very difficult environment, and even it's getting worse and worse. And so I had a couple of interviews with Hungarian pollsters and foreign pollsters too, and survey methodologies during my doctoral studies. And I just asked them about their problems, issues, and their opinions about polling in Hungary. And of course, one of the main things that they mentioned are the declining response rates. They experienced that. Even more worrisome, the differential no response that we see. It's not just that it's declining among certain social groups. And I don't see that partisan-based differential no response would be like a really big issue in Hungary, definitely not as much as in the US. It's more like, lower educated, younger people tended to be underrepresented. And pollsters also mentioned the decreasing trust of citizens. They experienced that. They linked that with non-response. And so there's a special thing in Hungary. These 14 years of this right-wing government really changed the polling field and made it very unequal in terms of the financial chances and the funding situations. And companies that are closer to the government and receive orders from the government have much more opportunities. This is very unbalanced. Many pollsters mentioned this unbalanced situation. And another issue is that pollsters are really divided. So it's not just that the public is becoming more polarized, but pollsters themselves are very divided along partisan political fault lines. So to close this, just a few thoughts about how election polling in Hungary could go forward, or what might be the future. And this is, not just something that I think. This is something some of the pollsters said too. And I'm saying this as a pollster, so I'm saying this to myself and to my research institute as well. I think there's definitely a need for more methodological research and evidence-based innovations. There's just almost no methodological research. There are no post-election, research, what you have in the US or in other countries, and there's very little in innovation. Partly because there are limited fundings, and also because of that. So I think there's a room for improvement there. I think the future will definitely be somewhere in the online and mixed mode world. But we don't really know that much about, how to use these methods more efficiently. We know how people do it in other countries, but we have few data about that. So this is why I wrote my dissertation. I'm really great to see some more of this. I think trust is an issue. Pollsters should do a lot more to maintain citizens' trust in pollsters and in poll results. And that could be achieved by an increased collaboration between the pollsters and some common, some agreement between the pollsters. I'm not saying that organizations, because that's probably too much, but at least some, something that the people see that, okay, these guys have something in common, they think something together, and I think that would help a lot. And also there's, of course, a need to educate citizens, the media and the politicians about what election polling is good for, what the data is showing and what the data is not showing, and all these interpretation issues that you probably have in your country too. You have it in Hungary too. And I think there's just, it's just nobody really does anything in this, and that's partly the pollsters' thing to do. So these are my thoughts from Hungary. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Adam. And indeed, it was quite related to survey methodology. I didn't get that from your title and from your abstract, but still great talks. I mean, it's amazing how it's amazing how productive you are. So this
Thank you. Well,
it's really crazy. Well done. So I'm a bit jealous here.
Thanks.
Yeah, stay for the Q&A later on, please. We have now our final speaker. Is he still here? Michal?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Would you start sharing your slides in the meantime?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. So we now have our final speaker. His name is Michal Kotnarowski. He is assistant professor at the Polish Academy of Sciences from Poland. And he's now talking about growing and tightly packed peloton, changes in the landscape of pre-election polls in Poland between 2011 and 2023. Again, you have 20 minutes. Looking forward to your talk. Thank you so much for having you today.
Okay, thank you. I just would like to I would like to start like this, that my presentation would be a bit similar about what Adam just talked, but so I will also say a few words about general landscape of Polish survey world, but mostly pre-election polls. And just like also for introduction, I would like to say that like right now I work as an academic, also like Adam, I'm involved in a European social survey on the Polish side. However, almost 20 years ago, I used to work as a pollster. So also we talk about the world in which I was creating at some time ago. My presentation is like a joint work with Professor Ireneusz Sadowski. So what is my approach today? So I would like to show like this, what we can call a pre-electoral polls landscape in Poland. Wait, I would like to, can you see my pointer? No, oh, wait. Okay, I don't know how to, you don't see my pointer, right? On the screen?
We don't see your pointer yet.
Okay.
But try again. I will let you know if I see. Oh, no.
Okay, now I changed this. Now
you changed the mode, vision mode.
Yes.
So
Yes.
It's not full screen now.
No, okay. Well, it's not. Actually, I need pointers, so I will, if possible, I can make like this. No, can you see my screen now?
We can still see your screen. It's not full screen, but if this works better for you, please feel free to. Yeah, now it's
okay
much better.
for you?
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So
then
Go ahead. Use the cursor.
Okay. Yeah. So so I won't analyze polls in details. I just would like to provide like overall picture of pre-electoral polls landscape. So so like a view which is visible for the ordinary citizen. And actually, I would like to focus what is apparent from the so just usually in the pre-election period we have chaos because various polls are published and they provide sometimes very different results. But I would like to focus on what is apparent from this chaotic picture. And like general question is how good is the shape of the pre-election polling industry in Poland? So actually, I think that this is so my motivation was also that this thing could be interesting for WAPOR community. Also, we had discussion about what happened in US previously before elections. So it will be kind of I will try to contribute somehow to this discussion. So I will mostly I will show data from the database of pre-election polls from 2011 to 2023, polls related to parliamentary elections in Poland. And I will focus on the data for the period 90 days before elections, more or less 3 months before elections. So what was going on in this period? Sorry, it's a typo. So then it is, so my main source is Wikipedia data. However, I provided some corrections, validations. I try to improve this data. So, but anyway, so the data set is in the making. So if you spot any mistake, those of you who are familiar with the Polish situation, then please let me know. Please contact me. Okay, so first let's have a quick look on raw data a bit, but I think it will be a bit telling. So here we have pre-election polls for these 2023 elections for the period of 90 days. So these straight lines indicate election result for particular party, and points indicate particular polls results. And so here's like a broad picture, but let's focus on particular parties. So, and what we see here for pre-election polls 2023, so the support for law and justice, PIS party, the ruling party was, let's say, more or less correctly predicted. Some polls were, so okay, and one thing that the closer we are to the right, the closer we are to the election time. So, and also we have like here this dashed line is a line of, is a local regression line, so providing kind of summary of various election polls. Yes, so in terms of law and justice, we see PIS, in other words, we see that these results are quite close to election results. For the main opposition party, Civic Platform, we see that election polls slightly underestimated the result. For the left party, the election polls slightly overestimated, but strange thing happened here. All election polls quite highly underestimated support for this party. So this party was the coalition of the Peasant Party and like a new party called Poland 2050, and they run in the elections as a coalition third way. And another thing what is also visible here, we have like a support for Confederation, which is far right party. We see that in general the results were overestimated. However, the closer the election, the trend was visible that the election that polls became closer and closer to official election result. Actually, and then there is a question: what happened here? Why all the polls underestimated support for the third way? And one of the hypotheses which were present in Polish discourse was that the hypothesis of strategic voting. Actually, this party was running as a coalition, and they needed 8% support to meet the threshold. And actually, it was crucial to gain the power, so to change the power, because this three party, they declared that they will form a coalition after the election, and without them, the coalition will not be, so they will not have sufficient votes. So one of the explanations which was present in the Polish public discourse was that actually people wanted to vote for left, but strategically voted for the third way. So they changed their mind in order to secure positions, to secure seats for this party, and actually to secure changing the power, changing the government. I will come back to this hypothesis later. And let's look at in Poland 2019, the previous. So let's come back. Let's go back in time, and let's see what's going on. So what happened previously? So in 2019, actually, what we observe. So here is like quite good estimation for the ruling party Law and Justice, a bit underestimation of the civic platform, a bit overestimation of left, and still we observe underestimation of this peasant party, one of the coalition partner of the third way, which we discussed, which we had before. If we go to 2015, actually these elections were quite good for the polling industry in Poland. So actually all the surveys were quite at the beginning, the closer the election, all the survey results, the polls results for various parties were quite close to their electoral results. So actually this here in 2015, it was quite good, and even for the peasant party. So this time it was a bit overestimated. However, in general, the election, the polls quite accurately, quite precisely estimated the support. And what happened in 2011, the last elections, which I'm analyzing. So here I don't have a lot of data. However, still this data I think are telling something. So what we observe here, still we have underestimation of peasant party and underestimation of party which is called Palikot movement. It was a new party which appeared in that elections. So I would say that this result indicate that strategic voting hypothesis for the third way in 2023 is not confirmed, because like what we observe here is that in the history that peasant party was usually underestimated in 3 out of 4 elections. And also we observe that the new parties are also underestimated, like this Palikot movement here. So what happened in 2023 is probably 2 effects: that we have peasant party usually underestimated for some reason, and also a new party. And another like a general picture which we can see from here is that Polish polls are usually good in estimating like established good parties, and they have constant like a systematic problem with underestimation of the peasant party, and problem with underestimation of the new parties which appear in the political system. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. So actually, what can we say about accuracy of polls? I did it here. I provided some calculations by measuring distance, and actual distances between 2 vectors. One vector is the average support for each party in polls published in the 2 weeks before the election. And the second thing is the second vector is a support according to the official election results. So actually, okay, so one I have like a support for some parties according to polls, mean of polls, and then support for the official election results. And between these 2 vectors, I calculated various kinds of distances using various formulas. And also because the measurement of distance is sensitive to the length of the vector, to secure comparability across elections, vectors which I was comparing, they contained the same number of parties. It was 5 biggest parties in each election. And what is the comparison? So first, so here we have results of this comparison of distances for all the elections except 2011. You will see why. And here we have various measurements. So first, Euclidean distance, Manhattan distance, Chebyshev distance, and one way of Minkowski distance. So actually, and okay, so the bigger the distance, the bigger the difference between election results and what polls predicted. Actually, what we can see from this picture is that the later we are in time, the less accurate were election polls. So how it was clear in the previous pictures that the closest to the election results were polls in 2015, and then 2019 were a bit far, and 2023 were more far. So we see that for Euclidean distance, the earlier in time, the lower the distance. The same for Manhattan, the same for Chebyshev, the same of Minkowski. So no matter what measure we apply, we have the same result. However, when we add 2011, we see that actually this distance in 2011 was even bigger than in 2023. So it's and what was common in these two elections, 2011, 2023, was appearance of new parties. So new parties emergence reduces accuracy of polls. Yes. So okay. So this is what I would like to say. Okay, next thing. So another thing which I would like to focus is the house effect. How various pollsters differ in terms of electoral polls. And here's the picture. The picture which we can see for 2023. I will make it a bit bigger. So we see that for PIS, the ruling party, actually we have a lot of chaos, but there is no clear difference. However, for civic platform, we see here these 3 points. This is the first institute which is Center for Public Opinion Research, CBOS in Poland. So it is budget-owned polling company, here this pollster they underestimated civic platform, the main opposition party. They also underestimated left. They also underestimated third way, and also actually they underestimated Confederation. However, because of it, they were quite close to the election, to the official results. Well, and then there is a question. Actually, what happened in CBOS? And those of you who know a bit about Polish survey polling industry. So this is quite well-established institution. It used to be like a perceived as a good quality research company, research institute. And actually, so here are like several things about CBOS. So okay, so of course some political activists accuse CBOS of being like supporting for ruling party. Actually, I do not believe it. Actually, I know people working there. I don't agree that it could happen. But I think there are like a various methodological issue. CBOS is the only company in Poland which uses a sample which is probability sample of individuals. Other companies they use usually so they're either CATI using some random dialing or some face-to-face, but mainly quota or random route. So actually, in terms of methods, CBOS is fine. One thing is that another difference between CBOS and others is that they send invitation pre-notification letters to respondents. So they could be connected somehow by respondents to the government. But I think the crucial thing is that what they publish just raw results only with post-stratification socio-demographic way. Actually, we don't know what's going on with results published by others. So, in what kind of weighting adjustments, modification of results is provided? Those companies they hide themselves through the business secret, so that they don't want to reveal, saying that this is their competition strategy. Well, so actually we don't know what's going on here. We know that these are the raw data. So on the other hand, we can say that this difference is what could be done when raw election data, raw poll data are changed using some modifications. Okay, but there's like another hypothesis which I would like to tell more. Okay, and but about CBOS, when it happened, we see that this outlying polls of CBOS in 2023, it was actually also visible in 2019 to some extent. But in 2015, the CBOS were very similar to each other, were similar to others. So something happened in 2019, 2023. Okay. And almost the last thing which I would like to say is herding effect. So actually, do we observe the effect that polls are similar to each other? So here I use for this effect, for measure this effect, I use polls published in the 2 weeks before election. For particular parties, I calculated just standard deviation of estimated support. And at the end, I also calculated mean of standard deviation to have synthetic measure for given elections. And also I used support for 5 biggest parties. And we had this CBOS as an outlying case, providing outlying cases. So first, okay, let's see about these distances. Actually, okay, these are not, sorry, not distances. These are the standard deviations for various kinds of, for particular elections. And what we see is that even if CBS is included, standard deviation of predicted support for all the parties actually is getting smaller the later in time. So it was the biggest values we have from 2011, the lowest in 2023. So what does it mean? So, okay, so for PIS, it goes down, for PO, it goes down, for left, it goes down, and for peasant parties about stable, and for the fifth party, whatever it also goes down, and on average, it goes down. And if we include, if we exclude CBOS from this, so also we see that we observe even stronger effect. So what we, in general, what we have here is increasing similarity of survey results in time. Well, so something strange is going on. So then okay, what are the main conclusions from my talk? So that we observe over years quite consistent patterns of overestimation and underestimation. So usually new parties in Poland are underestimated. Usually peasant party, which is located in the villages, is also are underestimated. Relatively well our estimation of ruling parties, and the largest opposition party was underestimated in the last 2 elections. And we have a clear house effect of CBOS in the last 2 elections. Another thing that like another general conclusion that overall accuracy of estimates gets worse as new parties emerged. So the worst accuracy we have for 2011 when Palikot movement appeared, and 2023 when the third way appeared. And however, another thing which we observe is that polls of various polling centers increasingly are similar to each other. So this herding effect is increasing. So we can ask why. So first thing that maybe we can think maybe they have similar methodologies, but it's not really the case, because here in this peak in the data which I analyze, companies use many kinds of methods, CATI, sometimes CAWI, sometimes face-to-face with various kinds of samples, and there is no increasing similarity in methodologies. Maybe we have similar problem. Maybe companies, so the polling institutions have similar problems with surveying unavailable respondents. So maybe that it could be one explanation. Another like hypothesis, maybe they're just looking at each other and try to adjust, but I don't have proof for it. However, like general conclusion is that what we observe in Poland is that we have increasing, let's say, ability of the studies. So actually the studies are similar to each other, but decreasing validity or accuracy. So they are more similar to each other, but they are more and more far away from the aim. So something as you can see on this picture. Well, so I think that's all. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Michal. Great talk. Very enlightening. So just a question to the three speakers, Jonas and Adam Stefkowitz. So are you still there? Yes, there he is. There's Jonas, and there is Adam coming too. Again, thank you so much to all 3 of you for your talks. And I think now it's time for some questions. I already have some questions on the chat, but if there are also people who would like to ask questions directly, so now it's the time just to go ahead and ask questions if this is possible. Otherwise, we can also start with the chat. Okay, so we have a comment by Claire Durant. So interesting, Adam. What about online surveys with a probabilistic sampling frame? Some use it. And do you have panels instead of social media bases?
Yeah, thank you so much, Claire, for the question. So there's a new probabilistic online panel. I'm a big fan of these panels. I'm enthusiastic about it, but it's really new and we haven't really seen its performance before elections. So I will definitely try to ask colleagues to look at it for 26. And there's Chronos, but that's the SS probabilistic panel. Other than that, there are lots of non-probability based panels. The only pollster who use online methods, it uses social media recruitment. And I know that their samples are biased and they do a lot of weighting and they try to correct for it and they trust it. And then I'm actually happy that they do it because somebody has to do it because that's probably the future, but it's not now, it's biased. So thanks for the question. And I also see other questions for myself, Jan. Should I?
Yeah, I mean, we have another one for you. So 3 questions by some people. So thank you, Adam, for the interesting presentation.
Okay.
Question 1 is like, it's a long comment. Do you still find a similarly big bias in both types of surveys? What do you do to correct for this bias in the polls published based on phone? And what do you know about what other pollsters do about this, given that most predictive polls still use live operators' phone surveys?
Yeah. Thank you, Gabor, for the questions. Great questions. For the first one, so regarding the estimation of Fidesz, I don't see much bias at least in our phone surveys. Predicting Fidesz vote share for us, it's the easiest. We've always been successful in estimating Fidesz vote shares. So we trust this method regarding this. What we're suffering with is the opposition. And if you look at the most recent election, 2024, the European Parliament elections, almost all pollsters underestimated the share of TISA, us as well. So we're more concerned about that. And this leads to the second question: what do we do to correct this? So we've started to experiment with mixing modes because I think that what's happening is that many opposition voters just don't answer our surveys. They don't get to answer telephone surveys. So this should be something like a unit non-response or differential non-response kind of thing, and that could be tackled by mixing modes. Because so in online surveys you see the exact opposite. Using a single mode online survey, you would underestimate Fidesz, but you would get a much higher share for TISA. So my opinion is that a mix of such a phone survey and an online survey could be the most ideal one. So that's one thing that we started to experiment with, and I know that other pollsters do that too. For example, in Budapest, if you do a Budapest sample, you cannot rely on a single mode phone survey, I would say, anymore. So I think it's worth try mixing. And the other thing we do is, of course, we weighting, and of course we, try to estimate the party preferences of non-respondents and refusals and all that. We do these all kind of the things, but other than that, we don't do that much because, we have this opinion that we should trust the raw data as much as we can. And I know that many pollsters use their sort of expertise and experiences from previous elections to artificially, I don't know, move that party there and these kind of corrections, but I just don't believe in that. I try to trust the raw data. And I don't, about the third question, I don't know that much about other pollsters, because as you probably know, pollsters do not like to tell these sort of secrets about what they do for corrections. So I don't know much about that. I know that they weigh their data and estimate non-responders, but other than that, I'm not sure.
We have a follow-up question. Son, it's thank you. Yes, I get this, but your paper about the 2018 pre-election experiment surprised me with the big pro-Fidesz bias, plus 20% in parentheses, and the phone survey. Was that a one-off?
Yeah, I think that one was off. That was not very typical at that time. I think that was from another company that we work with, and I think that was just very off. The other surveys that we've done that time were much close. Maybe a little bit overestimating Fidesz, but definitely not that much.
Cool. So are there any questions for the other presenters? I mean, I admire you a lot, Adam, but I would like to ask some questions the other two too. So otherwise, I mean, I have a question, for instance, for Jonas and for Michal. So let's wait a moment. Otherwise, I will give it a shot. Don't be shy.
There's a question to me, right?
Where is it? So I can see it.
I see two chats. In one of the chat, there is a question from Claire.
Yes, there's this F&A subpanel.
So now I'm
There's
back.
two more
So go ahead. I can't see it, unfortunately. So, but then go ahead.
Okay, so I can read it. Yeah. So the question.
Thank you so much, Michal.
Question: what about modes? May change in modes responsible for worst recent prediction? First question. Second, do pollsters weight using vote recall? Can this explain difficulty in estimate the vote for new parties? So about modes. Well, actually, I did not focus here in my analysis on mode, but the reason is that I thought that it's not crucial so much, because like when we look at this wrong predictions for the third wave in last elections, then everyone underestimated support for this party, and this polling organization, they use various kinds of modes, and everyone had the similar result. Well, but of course this is like a area for further study, and I should at least control for it or check it. And the second question: do pollsters weight using voter recall? So it is a similar case like as Adam said in Hungary. We do not know what pollsters do this. So, and the only thing we know is CBOS, that they just provide, as I said, raw data with sociodemographic post-stratification weight. And actually, how do they achieve the results? Because I'm not sure if these are like actually results. These are kind of predictions. Yeah, and so what is done and what kind of weights are used? It's not clear, and companies do not reveal this information. Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is that how long you can use the voter recall, and especially what about young cohorts, and what we observed in last elections was a huge electoral mobilization of young people. So well, maybe it could be explanation that if pollster used voter recall, then it could be the problem. Well, we don't know.
Okay, thanks for your answer. There's now one problem. So my chat is empty because I got kicked out. So could you help me out, Xenia? Are there any more questions?
There's one question for me. I can answer that, and
Go
maybe
ahead.
after that Jonas can talk as well.
No, go ahead. So then I mean,
Yeah, okay.
there's still time.
I have a question to you as well, so
Oh,
we won't
great.
get bored.
I also have question to Adam, actually.
I just might
Go
just
ahead,
answer
guys. Just grill each other.
Yeah. So the question in the chat is about RDD and its legal status, and that's a great question. And believe me, pollsters are debating about it, and lawyers are debating about it, because the legal status of RDD in random digit dialing in Hungary is a bit shady. It's not entirely clear. It's definitely not illegal. But it depends on the lawyer you ask. So if some lawyers say it's it's shady, you shouldn't do that. Some lawyers say it's okay. So I know that some pollsters do it, but not everyone. So it's a bit strange situation.
Thank you. So who wants to ask Adam? So go ahead, Jonas or Michal, if you have a question.
Yeah, it's just a brief question. You talked a lot about interview effects and face-to-face surveys, something I do agree with. I was wondering, in how far is it Hungary specific, and are you aware of any cases where someone tried to do anything about it? Because the problem we have is obviously that these problems occur, then you start writing a paper on it, it gets published 2 years later, and that's when the survey companies started pulling off the strategy. So are you aware of anything done against these interview effects?
Yeah, great question. I think some of these is Hungary specific, maybe because the situation with the interviewer population or this field has changed a lot in the last, let's say, 5 years, since COVID, especially. COVID hit really hard in the face-to-face field. And, these professions just become really bad. The payments are very low, and people just don't want to do it. It's a really hard job, doesn't pay well. There's a lot of interviewer fraud. And I don't think we can do much about it here in Hungary. Maybe the only thing you can do is just restart it and try to build something from scratch. And some people started something similar here, and this looks promising. But otherwise, what I see in Europe is that people don't fix interviewer problems, but they just shift to self-administration modes, and that's the trend. And I'm not sure if it's a good trend, because I like good interviewers, and I know that many surveys need live interviewers, so it's concerning, but
Yeah, I mean, the things you presented look pretty much like satisfying strategies for interviewers, make life easy. And if I had to pet a bet, like payment would be the variable explaining all of this in an international comparison, at least most of it.
Yeah, it explains some part of it, yeah.
Michal, it's your turn now.
So actually, I have like one question to Jonas. So for this, so what kind of sample you have for immigrants? Was it address sample or personal sample? And if personal, from where you get this data? And question, like a general question to Adam. So you said, okay, one comment is that when there is a survey about do people trust survey or believe in survey, it reminds me paradox of liar. So what to do if liar said I'm not lying? So then, yeah, but the question is, you said that pollsters in Hungary are highly divided. Actually, what does it mean? Because like so as I said, in my previous life, I used to be a pollster, and as I remember this time, so we did so even if we had some opinions, so we try to be as neutral as possible to get the most accurate results, or to present ourselves also that we are neutral and that people could trust us, and all the voices will be heard and it will be not manipulated and so on. So what does it mean that pollsters are divided politically?
Yeah, thanks. Go ahead, Jonas.
Yeah, it's a brief and boring answer. We had an address-based register sample from the city of Duisburg where we conducted the survey. It was huge. It contains names and addresses, which allowed us to go to the addresses and apply this in-person canvassing method, and also to to pre-qualify with this onomastic procedure the immigrant origin of our target person. So we could stratify this simple random sample from the population register, which is pretty high quality, but it's the world is changing. If you do this all over Germany, it gets really difficult. Like you need the cooperation from city councils and so on. So we were really lucky, and it definitely helped that it was a regional or municipal sample.
But how did you know that someone has an immigrant origin? It was already in the database, or
so what is in the database is if someone was born abroad or has two nationalities, but you can't use this information. What we did was to apply an onomastic procedure, which is a name-based strategy. So it takes the foreign surnames and attributes it with a probability to belong to a certain immigrant group or certain migration trajectory, like Russian Germans, for example. And after getting this rating, you go to the persons and put them into a screening or invite them into a screening interview and have to verify this. So you end up with a two-stage process, and it depends on the origin group how successful you are. So for Russian Germans that have, and for Turkish origin Germans that have very specific names, you end up with something above 80 or even 90% success rate in qualifying them. And after that, it really depends on the origin group how successful this method is. But we invented a weighting method that allowed us to track these paths after being classified correctly or being classified wrongly, and accounted for this in our weighting procedures. So even if you didn't belong into a certain group, you got into the interview, and this is later accounted for in the weighting methods. And you can leave them out, of course, if you don't like weighting methods in general.
Just one quick follow-up. I was wondering, is there an IMG3 plan? So, considering the upcoming election in Germany, so what's the current status? And then we can move to Adam's answer.
Yes, of course. We are. There won't be an IMG3 particularly, but we have the situation, especially in Germany as well as in other countries, that many immigrants, especially from the Middle East, are being naturalized and gaining citizenship. So we are working on a project that is capturing the political preferences and demands of these new citizens. So there's news coming up.
Oh, cool! Thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead, Adam. Shall we repeat the question?
Yeah. No. Thanks for the question about trust. So I agree that trust in surveys is not something that you can measure with surveys well. So there's of course some bias in that. And although I'm not that convinced that many people lie to interviewers or lie to surveys, but yeah, I agree. Regarding the divided pollster population. So pollsters are, I mean that this is a very small field, just a few persons, and everybody know each other, and there are some personal conflicts going on, and as I said, this the situation with 14 years of this right-wing government, it sort of divided some of the pollsters, and there's a lot of tension. I sense a lot of tension there, which are mostly politically based. And we try to overcome this, and we try to organize a couple of meetings and meetings where we can discuss collaborations and just sit down together, to talk this out or something like that. And we couldn't even organize one single kickoff meeting because there's so much tension already, which is also because of the media, because some of these stuff happens in the media, that certain media outlets attack pollsters, that they lie, and that it's not the president who sues pollsters, but it's just the media, and it creates a lot of tension. So it's really not easy. And there's a question for you, Mika.
Yeah,
Yes, two questions. So can you see it, Michal, or should I?
Yes, I can see. Just a comment. When I was poster, once I was personally attacked by the Prime Minister. So then I thought that my work matters. Yes.
Oh, that's an honor.
It's an honor. Yeah. Anyway, but Gabor, thanks for your questions. So, well, we have odd results of CBOs, and I agree with you that it's. I don't think it's that there is effect that people connect CBOs to the government, and we so recently. So we had a seminar on which Monika Nalepa from Chicago University, she presented her work about CBOS data from 1980s. And actually, the thing is that this institution was established in Poland in 1982 when we have martial law. So it was at the time the institution was very much connected to the Communist Party. So like the military person was the first director of this institution, but however, it was still professional. And even in the 90s, Nalepa showed that even in the 90s, people were not afraid about telling their honest opinions about the Communist Party, about solidarity. So I also don't think that it was like a huge effect these days. And I think that's something with methodology and well, yeah. So basically, so we see what are the raw data from CBOS data, and what we observe if we do not provide some extra adjustments. And so yeah, and yeah, but on the overall picture, so they lost their credibility in public credibility, and in public discourse they are not perceived as an institution which you should take seriously. So they have right now the crisis of image as a poster. And the question is there bias in the register of residents? So it could be the case because so we know from European Social Survey that many people who live in the countryside, especially younger, they move to the cities. And in ESS, and actually they are registered in the villages, but to conduct interview, you need to follow them follow them through their migration paths. And actually in ESS we do this. We follow this. So actually in ESS, if selected person is not living in particular place, we are asking for contact details and try to chase this person in different location. But in ESS we have like a 3 months for the field work. In typical CBOS study, they have 1 week, so it's not possible. Another problem which could be possible responsible for this result is different response rate in villages and in cities. So, and as far as I know, they didn't correct it. So in the villages which is usually Polish villages usually support Law and Justice Party, then typical response rate we know from ESS is about 60%. In the cities is 20-30 at maximum. So the composition of the sample is that these people are overrepresented. Even if you provide just simple socio-demographic weights, maybe this thing is not corrected enough. So it would be that maybe I would look for rather methodological explanation of these odd results than the thing that so I do not believe very much in this connection of CBOs with the government.
Yes, thank you so much, Michal. Unfortunately, we're already at the end, but it was really great to have you today. all three of you. We have one message from Jonas. Unfortunately, Jonas, I would drop that for now because we have to come to an end. But
That's
again,
an answer to the previous question. So,
oh, thank you so much. I didn't read it that quick. So again, thank you so much for being so kind to give a talk today in the webinar. Yeah, I wish you all the best. Thanks for all the insights, and stay tuned. Hope to see you sometime soon again, in person or online. And also many thanks to the audience. Big applause. And yeah, again, goodbye. See you. Have fun.
Thank you. Bye.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.